A very good evening to all our viewers, and welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toivo Jabela, your host. Tonight we are excited because we have a very exciting subject on the agenda, that is the issue of the red line that the mayor of Windhoek, Dr. Job Amupanda, is challenging, actually pushing for its removal through a court process. Dr. Mpanda is joining us tonight on the show. Welcome, Doctor. It's good to see you. You were involved in an accident recently. I think it's public information, but you seem to be in good shape. So we are grateful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It said that when the kids are born, they say, I don't know, what is it called? The
headrest.
Yeah, the where you keep the babies.
Oh yeah.
In some families, that comes from generation to generation.
Yeah.
But some other people, they just go to the open market and buy it. So there's a difference. He says, so it means if you got yours from the open market,
a tragedy would have happened.
Yeah, but us is coming from generation to generation.
Yeah, indeed.
So we are able to pass through the eye of a needle.
Indeed. Thank you, Doctor, for being here.
Including the red line.
Sure, indeed. And then, of course, we also have Mr. Henk Mudge. He's Henk. So sorry, Henk. You see, your father was such a legend, maybe a bigger legend.
He's in the shadow.
So you're in the shadow of the old man. So Henk Mudge is the president of the Republican Party. Thank you, Henk, for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So Job, you've been a vocal critic of this red line issue for many years. But the turning point seems to be when you were personally, even at a very personal level, experienced the dreadfulness of that demarcation when I think you were carrying food for your family from somewhere in the north, and then it was tossed away at Oshivelo. Give us a bit of background why you are fighting this matter.
I mean, it's we know that we had 106 years of colonialism, and in those 106 years of colonialism, the promise of freedom, the promise of independence, was that we are going to have a Namibia that belongs to all. The power shall vest in the people of Namibia, who shall exercise it in democratic institutions. But as you know, the nature of politics and the balance of forces and the negotiations and things like that, it is not always easy. For the Cuban, for instance, when people talk about the revolution, you first have a revolutionary situation and the revolutionary outcome. Not every revolutionary situation results in a revolutionary outcome. What is a revolutionary situation? You would have to have a situation where you have two antagonistic forces. One feels that they need to liquidate one another. They cannot coexist, the colonizer and the oppressed. So the colonizer wants to maintain their position, and the oppressed, the moment when they stand opposed to the colonizers, the revolutionary situation ensues. And when the revolutionary situation ensues, one must win and one must liquidate another. That's why in Cuba, the independence is declared. They would come to the independence avenues with guns and say, we have now declared independence. Then that is a revolutionary outcome. So you have effectively liquidated another one. And you hear a lot of people who are saying Namibian revolution. Yes, there was a revolutionary situation, but it did not result in a revolutionary outcome. So the promise of freedom was was somehow interfered with the negotiation. In the negotiations, it's a give and take. I mean, some of the people who have been in the war for a long time, they've not had enough time to be in hotels and to wear a bow tie in parliament and things like that. So I think because of that fatigue, the fatigue, people really tired. Pohamba in 2012 told us he never thought that Namibia would get independent in his lifetime. He thought he was going to die and people were still fighting. So because of the negotiations, a lot of things could not be put on the table. So in order to, the colonial forces negotiated and said, okay, guys, you are going to sing, you are going to get your national anthem, you are going to get the flag, you are going to have freedom to have Kasinga Day, 26 August, but you will not have freedom on the economy. So you must say viva, viva there, and shout, Hairwa, Mekonjo, and all those things. Those things we are going to give to you.
Yeah.
Now I'm saying we as the white regime now saying, okay, we can give you the freedom, you can mobilize and have rallies and tell history stories and have news appear on NBC, but the economy, ISO is on say. So that's what has happened in the colonial project. So we understand, but that in a negotiation is that even in business, he's a businessman, you give and take. They negotiated a deal that was maybe in their imagination the best for them. And we are now in a time where that generation is facing a sunset of their lives. Both them and the negotiators, including the members of parliament. I was never in parliament. He was in parliament with those politicians, and they had those circumstances. One of the principal things that we are saying is that we are not part of that negotiating generation. We respect what they've in the circumstances. Now, we don't just want to be on NBC and on the agenda and on 26 August, 10th of May, and all these things that they have. We want to discuss the economy. What's going on the economy? Yeah. So that is a context in which we are trying to be able to bring about the real politics of emancipation. It's basic and it's simple. Yeah?
Yeah.
It is basic and it's simple. If I, as a man in my culture, it's not just about the meat being taken. As a man in my culture, I must be able to provide. Just like any other man must be able to provide. And if there is no, if I'm unable to provide, it's a serious cultural problem. I'm going to be regarded as useless. So if I go to the north, I slaughter my goat, I must be able to come and bring it to my family. If you want to get, you are married now, before you were married, if you want to find a beautiful girl from Hobabes, this beautiful girl is a Herero, and then they're asking for 5 cattle as lobola. And I know that in Okalongo you have about 30. You're not like myself, you only have 30 of them. Do you know that you are going to actually buy what you already have?
Yeah.
Because you will not be able to pass so that in order to give lobola, you must buy new things. So that's a context, there's a cultural context, there's a psychological context, there's a legal context and all those things. There is no, of course we can go into the discussion, there is just no basis. 31 years after independence to have the red line. And people are saying, yeah, the borders must go away. That's your responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm affirming my rights as a Namibian, yeah, that I have a right to the family.
Indeed.
I have a right to move anywhere in the country, and whoever is given the responsibility of doing what. That's why I'm taking the Ministry of Agriculture to court.
Yeah.
Because they have a responsibility. They are the one who are maintaining that specific. And we're not convinced that there is a good legal basis for them. That's why you see them waffling. And because it's difficult for them, some of them are on record.
Yeah.
Because the president is on record saying it must. In fact, the president confirmed that it's discriminatory. The president confirms that it will benefit the people. The president confirmed that they have allowed it for too long, and it's not right what they've done. But his minister is filing to challenge it. So president is our witness.
You've made your point.
Government is our witness, and everyone. So there is no, I don't think we must rather, even in this discussion, for us to have a fruitful discussion, we must have consensus that it has outlived its purpose. Yeah. It is not relevant anymore. It must go.
But that is exactly what I want to put.
So if we are going to waste our time about justifying it, it's like almost if you have Pablo Escobar. You know, Pablo used to, in those communities, he used to pay school fees from drugs. He used to do a lot of things. There's another guy called Christopher Dudos Coke in Jamaica, in a place called Tivoli Gardens. And at one point, he became a serious drug lord. And whenever the police want to arrest him, the women will form a human shield. They will be on the road, laying, say, no, you cannot take dadas because dadas provide school fees. But they had to take him out. Yeah. Why? Because you threaten the legitimacy of the state.
I hear you.
It's a you cannot use some sort of temporary illogical benefit and you use it to justify. Of course, if you want, we can also go into quantitative details.
Yeah,
but let's also
we'll go into that. Yeah, we'll go into that. Henk, what is your reaction to what Job had just said? What is your stance first and foremost on the red line? And do you think there's justification in what he's saying for it to be removed at all?
You know, there's a lot of facts available.
Yeah. It's matter of fact,
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I was asked very late to
come to the show.
to come to the show.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that I'm here. In principle, I know what's going on, and I know why the red line is there, still there. But there's a lot of facts. When you phoned me yesterday, I tried to get some information, and I came along this report that was compiled 2014 already.
Yeah.
And I looked through the report to see the pros and cons for the removal over the pros and cons for 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, permanently, and so on and so forth. I have to respond first to something you said.
Yes. Yes, please.
The negotiations for before independence was not between the local political parties and SWAPO. It was the Western Five and South Africa and SWAPO. We were very upset about that. Where the political parties in Namibia came in was with the writing of the Constitution, which was a good thing, I think. The reason why I'm saying that is I think a lot could have changed and should have changed over the past 31 years. Now, I don't think it's fair to blame, let's say, the colonial, those of us who were part of the colonial regime. And we must also remember that the colonial regime actually ceased to exist to a large extent in 1978. When we had that first election, there was a transitional government. And although South Africa claimed to claim education and the defense force. So what I'm saying is, myself, I'm actually the wrong person to sit here today to discuss this matter because I'm white. I'm not sensitive about it at all. But people from outside could see that me and Job are opposed to this, which is not the case. I'm not trying to defend anything. He knows me well, and you should know me well by now. The fact of the matter is that I think the red line, there is a good reason why they put it there. You know, from what we know about the way they farmed up in the north, the people from, I think it's the Kwanyamas, who were moving in between Angola and Namibia. You could put up a fence there, they will just break it down and they will go through because they move their cattle to where the grazing is. So it was not practical to put it up right on the border. You could say that in between the Kunene and the Okavango River, it could work, but then you must have places like Oshabella where the people can go through. How do you go through? So that's not practical. So if you want to put up a fence as far possible north as you can, it must be then this side of the river. So then all the lodges and people who's got their facilities on the river will have a problem for the people to come and visit, and also the same on the other side of the river. So I think what they did, I don't know, I can't say, but I think what they did long ago during the colonial period, when they put up the fence, was probably to do it like what we call Awambaland, to do it on the southern border of Awambaland and around the northern communal areas. So I think that was just a decision. But
do you agree what he's saying, that, I mean, his assertion that, of course, you know, there's this whole thing of the disease, Linda pest, which doesn't exist anymore, and then of course now we are using other diseases as reason to keep it there. Job is saying that the black SWAPO leaders, when they were negotiating for freedom, they were given the easy things of songs and flags and all this, and the white community men like yourself maintained the economic structure.
I don't know who gave it to them. I mean, we couldn't give it to them, they took it. They won the election, so they took it. But what is a fact is, and I'm always asking this question to my friends, I've got quite a number of people in the black community that I talk to quite frequently, and very straightforward, you know. So we have to talk about these things without beating around the bush. We haven't got time for that. And then I always ask them, you know, if you complain about the economy and this and that and the other thing, we had the African, what was that first bank that we had here? It was
Citibank.
City Savings and Investment Bank, which was a disaster. Also, black foreigners who came in were involved, and some of our own people, well-known people, and SME Bank, and so it's not. And this is what upset me. It's not a lack of quality people amongst our black community that, you know, the perception exists that our people can't do it, which is nonsense. We have the people who can run a bank. We have the people who can run a Papkewitz. We have them up north. We have people who can have big business. I don't know why it's not there, why we don't have those business, but let's just park that on the one side. I think as far as the red line is concerned, it was there. We also found it like that when I grew up. It was there. But if I read through this report, they mention sort of short term, as I said, 0 to 5 years, pros and cons, 6 to 10 years. Beyond 10 years, and if you read through this, then there's not even a question that the removal of the red line will have risks involved. There's not even a question because of foot and mouth. And the foot and mouth is not coming necessarily from Angola, it's coming from Zambia, that side, Kavango East, Zambezi. That is normally where you have the outbreaks. The ideal thing will be to remove it. Because if you look at the numbers, the GDP currently from the agricultural sector is 5%. If you remove it, it can move up to 20%. So in other words, the facts speak for itself. And so from that point of view, there is not even a question in my mind that it need to be removed and that there must be some other measures in place. Now, people will say, okay, but what? If we have an outbreak of foot and mouth, and it spread through Namibia, and I experienced that in 1961, I think. There's another red line that people don't know about, and that is just at Mount Echu, Success, this side of Otjiwarongo. There was another veterinary line and fence that was erected, running from east to west. So they did away with that one. So all I'm saying is, I can understand what Job said. There's not even a question about it. We need to. I'm actually disappointed when I saw this report this morning. That it was already compiled in 2014, 7 years ago. What happened to that?
We'll discuss the report in a moment. Henk, thank you very much. We go for a quick break and then we return with the conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome to another exciting edition.
Mudge and Dr. Job Amupanda. Job, I see when Henk was speaking, you were taking a lot of notes. What is it that you want to say back to him?
No, he makes quite useful, because obviously one of the things that people must always understand, people at my level of consciousness, you don't just wake up one day and you say you're going to challenge the red line. You plan different scenarios, scenario planning, scenario A, B, C, and D. And that's why I'm at this point. You see, for example, he explained it quite correctly, and he said, when you look at how they farm, like he mentioned an example of the Kwanyamas and things like that, and that's true. That's on the basis of that, it was basis of how people conduct their life, yeah, and how others conduct their life, because the Kwanyamas farming style is different, and our lifestyle this side is different. Therefore, there must be a line and must be justified in terms of that. So this is what it eventually comes to. But I think there's quite a number of young people who follow this show, and we would not succeed if we don't give them a proper factual account of what actually happened. Now, at the Berlin conference in 1884, although Namibia was now given as part of a German colony, it was not part of the German strategy to take control of the colonies immediately. So what the German strategy was that they must get private companies with private capital to go and exploit the opportunities that are provided in the colonies. So people such as Adolf Ludwig, who have come in later on the Diamond Rush and all those, the Dutch East India Company. Those were private companies with private capital that were coming to the then German Southwest Africa for them to be able to do that. Now, with the passage of time, there was a private individual entrepreneurs and traders and all those things. Now, this is way back before the missionaries came in the other period. Now, the presence of the German colonial occupation is that they then start settlement. And when they start settlement is that they ask for support from Germany to say that, no, we have now gotten possession of the land and properties and things like that. So we now need protection. So when you study the soldiers and all those people that came from Germany, some of them came on that invitation. In fact, because most of them were male, and when the soldiers came, there was a ship that came from Germany full of women, because they realized that the guys now need women.
No, they ordered the women.
So they ordered the women to come in. So I'm giving you a context for you to be able to understand. There was a private accumulation of capital, private accumulation of property at that time. And one of the first things that the Germans did, they started taking and raiding and removing the cattle of the. In fact, one of our studies with our lawyers, we actually discovered that over the years, the number of cattle that were owned by Hereros, particularly in central Namibia, the number of cattle they started declining, and the Germans' amount of cattle started rising up. Yeah, so that in the number of cattle of Hereros started declining to an extent where the Germans started now owning a lot of cattle than the Hereros. Yeah, so because the Germans had now a number of cattle and things like that, in those just that period preceding, before towards the end of 1890s, the case of Rinderpest was now had coming from West Africa, all the way through the Zambezi, as is now speaking out. So when the Germans, who have now gained control of large tracts of the cattle and the land, when they heard that the Rinderpest is now coming, so they decided to erect a line. What is that line? To protect their animals that they've now gained. So as they protect their animals, they are protecting their animals from what? From disease. So at the core of the decision to erect the red line, this is what it meant. It means it's a selfish, private decision to protect yours and not to protect that of the other. So the red line never had a national objective from its inception. So obviously then, what then happened is that After some time, then there was a war of national resistance from 1904 to 1908. As a result, because the natives started now protesting, started now engaging militarily and otherwise, in fact, the German parliament actually took a decision that the red line must be kept and maintained because we can no longer afford a situation where the colony, the place where what became as a police zone, that area, they decided that it should not expand anymore after the genocide. So they decided that the red line is going to serve as their area. So already I'm trying to explain to you that it never then served any other purpose like how people, fast forward, it then started getting a political and military, the military from 1915 onwards, when the South African took over. It started now having that political and military connotation. In fact, there were about 15 military outposts just around that red line. The actual soldiers, we're not talking about animals, but the actual soldiers that are there. So, and then with the passage of time, and it started serving that purpose, you can now control the movement of people during that time. So in fact, in the 1960s, there was a case of foot and mouth disease in the South. Now, how did it happen? Where did it originate from? Did somebody smuggle or carry or aeroplane from a cattle from Marala with foot and mouth and took it in the South? But nothing ever happened. In fact, we even hear, interestingly, that there was a red line, another line, Joshua Rongo. In fact, it's new information, and it was removed. And why was it removed? Because
the fence is still there, but you can see its success.
Yeah.
You can see the fence coming to the road, but the gates and all that's been removed.
Yes, so it's removed. So in other words, it's no longer there. But you can see historical fences that it was there and it is removed. Why was it removed? Somebody obviously realized that you can't run an economy like that or along the lines of exclusion. What I'm trying to give you, that historical narrative, is very important to understand. In fact, in 2011, Rinderpest was declared... it no longer exists in the world. This is not by government, it was by the international, what is it, animal disease something there. I have the report here. So Rinderpest no longer exists. That's why the argument cannot be sustained successfully. That's why, you see, when you go to we must actually understand. That's why we are in court. We want to demonstrate for people to understand. It's not just about the animals. If you go now, you are coming from the north. Obviously, when you go to the north, you have those shoes, you have your platties, and you have all those other things that are there in your bag. You get out of the car, and when you get out of the car, you must go to the Met and do that. Because they don't want you to carry the diseases into the real Namibia.
Yeah.
So, but what happens to other pairs of shoes that you also have? That you have been walking around the cattle post maybe for the whole time. You have 5 pairs in your bag, but you must get out and do those things. and you can see, then you sit there and wonder, what is going on in the imagination of these guys? Yeah. So, and then you ask these people, okay, can you please explain what's going on? They take your meat and they burn it. Why they confiscate my meat and burn it? And it's illogical. If I slaughter a goat and I take a piece of it and braai it at my village, yeah, and I leave the remainder of it for me to come and take to Henk in Windhoek, they say no, I cannot do that. So okay, let's assume that I agree that there's something wrong with the meat. What is the government saying to me? You can eat infected meat, you can die from it for as long as you don't die in the real Namibia. So if the government have a responsibility towards me, if there's something wrong with that meat, they must not allow me to eat that meat in Omarala.
I hear you.
So why do you allow, if there's something wrong, it's like, okay, you are fine, you can have, you can smoke, you can kill, can you imagine if we have a situation where we're saying that it is fine, you can, as mayor, I decide, okay, fine, you can rape in Okahanja, just don't rape in Windhoek. What nonsense is that? If it's not good for Kahanja, it cannot be good for Windhoek. Government has no business in supporting others and excluding others. You can't do that. That's why I gave an analogy of a pit bull. A father with 5 kids. 2 of his girls are outside there. And 3 of these boys and his wife are in the house. So, and then the 2 girls start running, coming, and the pit bull is chasing the 2 girls. The 2 girls are outside. And the father sees through the window, aha, the pit bull is chasing my girls. Do you know what the father does, who's now government in this extent? The father closes the door to protect the wife and those that are inside. And the girls eventually die. What type of useless father is that? And that's how this government is useless, is weak, just weak, completely weak. You are not, people are saying, yeah, Job, the borders must move. That's not my responsibility. I'm not in government. If I was in government, I would have had a plan. I have no business in saying the fence must move here. I'm simply affirming my rights. Yeah. I'm simply indicating that you can't have a situation like that. Yeah. And no one can just, historically, there's no case to be made. Yeah. After independence, you can't have a situation where you can sustain things like that. And that is why even now, in terms of inheritance, you find even a minister or cabinet or even government, you have a minister who goes and complains. Once you see you are in a country and a minister complains about something that they're supposed to have done, that shows weakness. That is why people go to the north, you get married there. Yeah. And then you get married and then you come back here. Your father maybe have a house. Your father have a house in Windhoek. Yeah? So the relative could have come and claimed that house of yours because your father and your mother got married in the north. It is something that cannot be sustained. The discussion now, because look, that's why why did you decide to go to court? I'm explaining to these people, look, even in SWAPO resolution, there's clear resolution on the red line. This report is there. Yeah. So we must be able to understand as Namibians. That is not an issue of whether it was discussed. They agree that it must be removed. But somebody just say, hey. You remember the story of RAFO? The RAFOs when they're coming from Japan. And all of a sudden people could afford it. The teachers could do. There was a lot of RAFOs in the north. And somebody just pick up the phone, hey, comrades. And then the comrades got scared. We have clear instruction from the sponsors. Our congress will not have food and T-shirts. So, comrades, let's ban this RAFO. And that the decision was taken like that. So, it is important for us to ventilate these rights.
I think you've made
in court. Because so that they are left. We can no longer leave it to people who also agree. If the president also agree, then the president must implement. Why is he not implementing? It tells us that there is something more than what meets the eye. You must also remember, most of these cabinet ministers and the permanent secretaries and directors have farms on this side of the red line. Yeah. And when you sell out, when you commit class suicide, this is what happens. Most of them have farm, but they are not farmers. You know actually what is happening? White farmers who are residing in those farms are managing the farms on their behalf. I'm finishing now.
Or renting it.
Yes, or renting it to them. Yeah. So obviously the white man will pick up a phone call, hey, minister, Dai Amupanda Maniki. You know, he must keep quiet. So, and then what can he say? Henk does the same. Sometimes calls me and say, hey, you are my small boy. Yeah. So you need to be able to understand that when a person is compromised to that extent, they will never implement it. Once the court says, and in fact, I'm even being generous, I'm saying, I'm listening to you are saying, no, there must be a process and what. Okay, fine. We agreed with my lawyer that we must give 90 days. Yeah. We must give 90 days to government to do whatever it is to remove the red line. If removing the red line means moving it wherever, that's your business. Yeah. You are paid to do that. It's your responsibility.
You've made your point, Mayor. So quickly go for a quick break. This was an Amupanda session. Then we come back to Henk to interject. Yes. We continue with the agenda. Henk, I don't know if there's anything specific that you want to say back to Job, but maybe let me ask you this. Do you think that in terms of national cohesion, it's important that some of these demarcations that have so many connotations, they have connotations of originally racial exclusion, economic exclusion, and whatnot. I understand the argument and the fear that that a lot of farmers this side, white and black, who are on the northern side or the southern side of the fence, have about the market. But there are those of us that are based on the other side who also want to participate in some of these lucrative markets. We are even told, no, go to Angola, there's also a market there. Why can't I sell my meat in Norway like others? Do you think it's an important, do you at least agree with the principle itself that the thing must go, even if now the modalities is a different conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact is, like what Job said, we must find another way to protect not the people south of the red line, but we must protect all the people. From the Kunini, from the Kavango River, from the Zambezi, which will be difficult. We must protect the animals of all the people right down to the Orange River. There's not even a question about it. The question is, how are we going to do it? And I also agree with him to say this is not our problem. The government must find a way. They are sitting on this report since 2014. It is a fact that should there be a foot and mouth outbreak, and we don't have some other line to stop it, like what they have in Botswana. I think they've got about 3 or 4 red lines, if you want to call it that. If you go from Kasane right down to Khanzi, I think you go through 3 or 4 of them. And they are there because if there's an outbreak up north, then they close that one. The rest remain open. And if it comes further down south, then they close the next one, so that those animals are in the quarantine, the rest is still open. So there's a real problem as far as the foot and mouth outbreak. We had one just now, up in the I think Kavango East or Zambezi. So one need to look at that and see, but how are we going to solve that problem? But you cannot just have a line on the map and say, you know, those guys are out, these guys are in. That's wrong. There's not even a question about it. I read through the report and the guys made some very interesting statements. The cohesion of the people. You know, you cannot carry on with Ovamuland and the rest of the country. That must stop. I mean, Ovamuland is Namibia, and Namibia is part of Ovamuland, if you want to call it that. So there must be another way to resolve this issue. I'm not going to go into history. That's his strong point. I'm a civil engineer. I look at figures and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, we can refer to what happened in the past as much as we want to. We're not going to achieve anything. I'm not saying the fact that he referred to it. We're not going to achieve anything. All of us. What needs to be done is we must look at the problems and get it solved.
Yeah.
We cannot, after another 30 years, sit and then still have problems that needed to be solved because we had an incompetent government. Then we must change the government and get people in there who can act in the best interest of all the people. You know, I read this morning in this report, Namibia, that was 2014, 2.8 million cattle in the country, 1.6 million up north. 1.6 million in the commercial, communal areas. More than half in that part of the country, where the rest of the country has got less than half. So that just doesn't make sense.
So if you were talking to Henk, if you were talking to, so Job went to court. He lodged this application. There is this flurry of counter applications against his, defending essentially the status quo. I don't know. We will know the full details once the hearing starts. So to know what is Carl Schleitman saying actually. Is he saying he's opposed to the removal of the fence, or is he trying to stop the pace at which Job wants it done, but he would eventually do it? If you were talking to a person like Carl Schleitvine today, what would you tell him as far as this subject is concerned? And Mr. Straydom is from the Meat Board? Yeah.
What do you tell them? We told them many things, they just didn't listen. So the chances are good that they will try and negotiate something and still not do something about it. I think the fact that initially I didn't agree with the court story, the fact that Job went to court. I think I've also got children his age. Say they sometimes are storming like bulls and doing a lot of damage, and then later on say sorry. Not that I say this is the case now, but this is what I like about young people, and I can honestly say that for me it is exciting to talk to young people. I'm not that much older, but I like talking to young people. Open-minded, they've got another agenda, they've got think outside the box, and that's the way that we should be to learn. I cannot say because I'm older that I know everything. No, these young people know a lot, and also to look at something from a different perspective. That is very, very important.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure if we are true to ourselves and honest, we will always agree. We will always agree that we cannot differ when it comes to our country and our people, and people are unhappy.
Yeah.
And they've got a reason to be unhappy, like this. We should not disagree about that. All I'm saying is, I hear what he says about 90 days. I think you're going to cause a bit of a heart attack. This government never did anything in 90 days, maybe 900 days. But I think there must be something that the government will be forced now to sit down and say, guys, we haven't got a choice. We need to do something now.
Definitely.
We cannot push this thing over to a committee or appoint consultants to do a study for us and put it in the cupboard. Oh, we did something. You did nothing.
Yeah.
You only have a study. But implement this stuff. And if there are different scenarios, then look at those scenarios and decide what needs to be done, what can be done. They talk about costs. If you see the amounts that the government stole, and these people stole in Namibia and corrupted this country, that amount that is needed to look after that fence or to look after that whole situation, to implement other measures, it's nothing. It's nothing. At that stage, I think they talk about, I made a note here somewhere. Sorry that I have to look at my notes, but as I said, you were a bit quick on me, but I think yeah, it's difficult to say, but I think it's about 200-300 million.
Yeah.
Well, that's nothing.
That would cost, I hear you.
To implement other measures
Small money. That is, 300 million is half of what Fishrot has taken out of the country. It's double of that, because Fishrot took about 150 million, which never went to anything productive for the community, but to individuals. So you've made your point.
So all I'm saying, can I just...
Yes, conclude, yes.
So what I'm saying, I've got nothing against pressure being put on government to do something. I think they had enough time to think of what should they do to solve this problem.
Indeed.
The only thing that I was always, I go up north, not that frequently, but fairly frequently. And I think the one thing that needs to be done, and that is also a cultural thing, a lot of people keep cattle for what they call it, that's their pride, They also up in the Kahoko land, with those cattle with the long horns and so on.
Yes.
So they don't slaughter. I made a note somewhere where they said that the takeoff rate for cattle. There's a very, very interesting thing that I just read. Increase in quality of breeding stock. The takeoff rate in Namibia was 13.75. The southern part, 25%, northern part, 2.5%. And cattle calving in the northern commercial areas, 35%. In the rest of Namibia, 70%. So there's a big discrepancy.
Yeah.
And that comes to the quality of your cattle.
Yeah.
And I've said a long time ago that and I'm actually observing every time I go up is we need to help the people up north to have better breeding stock.
Yeah.
That need to be done. There's not even a question.
Yeah.
Because I always say these other cattle are thin and look like this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
That is important.
Low quality.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
There's one aspect.
Yeah, please.
There's one aspect that people are missing. You know, I always hear people talking about export. We need to, I think it's very clear. It was when we released the report, because I had gotten that report already in that year, when it even served in at cabinet and things. So at that moment, I believed that somehow, Southwest Africa would find its way to solve those problems. I thought, man, maybe the people will be able to attend to those things.
Yeah.
The agriculture as a whole, you know, and the people take the budget, or they take agriculture, crop production, maize, and what is not just a beef industry. Agriculture as a whole contributes 5% to the country's GDP. So one of the fathers, you always hear these figures of 7 billion and what being thrown around. And in fact, I'm also just very happy that some of those inaccuracies are actually in the affidavit. But that's not what it is. I mean, 5% of the country is agriculture as a whole. If we go deeper there and check actually how much does the beef industry contribute. So, but that should not be our concern to say the beef industry. I think it would be foolish for anyone to say the beef industry is not important. Every industry is important, but there is one thing that we need to be able to understand, because no one has ever quantified the domestic economy as far as the beef industry is concerned. You know, I go to single quarters there, just the single quarters, they say in a day, they slaughter about 20 cattle, single quarters in a day. Where these cattle that are being slaughtered coming from, they are coming from nearby farms. 15,000. So, but if I can load my cattle in my bakkie and deliver it there, sell it for 8,000, because we're buying this for 8,000 in the north. Same, can even be the same size and things like that. So the beef industry is not just, we shouldn't just be concerned apparently about export and export. It's very important for foreign currency and all those things. But we must first be able to quantify what if because if I go and buy from you, as an example, when I was in the north recently, I went to Rakana site and I bought 10 goats. Now when I bought those 10 goats, there is no, I bought from a person, we exchange money. The only thing that I received is a paper that allows me in case I'm stopped by the police. But we exchange money. It's about 6,000 that I paid, about 450 for each goat. But the government have no mechanism to capture that transaction between the two of us. Because the only thing that is just a paper from the headman and the owner to say, I sold this to this person and they can move. But what about that 5,000? Who account for that 5,000 in the economy? My 5,000 that I paid and the animals that are in my possession. So you understand? So because of this obsession with export, and it's a serious problem. We need to be able to quantify how much is it the beef industry, because that's why we're always manipulated about these figures, because they get those from the exports.
Yeah.
You know, because they have mechanism to track what is basically at one wedding. When I got married, I was told at my wife's side there was about, because we have these cultures of giving, and that's the aspect that he was talking about, why cattle are kept. Cattle in our cultures are currency. It's not just about export. It has probably about 5 purposes. If you kill somebody, you pay in terms of cattle. If there's a drop of blood, you pay in cattle. And if somebody is getting married, you must pay in cattle. It's not that they don't want money is because there's a cultural connotation to it. As a father, when you give it to, from cattle move from generation to generation, there are names that are given to cattle. It's not just product. So we also need to provide a broader understanding for people to understand a psychosocial orientation towards cattle, because cattle is currency. That's why, in fact, you would even find that very strange when you are punished to say traditionally the amount of it will say you must pay 10 head of cattle. But if it's translated in monetary terms, those 10 head of cattle could even just be 8,000 in terms of traditionally. One cattle, the amount of money it is not related to the market.
Yeah.
When you are punished as part of the, for example, the Andonga judiciary, it does not have that capitalist orientation. The cattle can even be of a lesser amount in terms of that.
I want to give you a quick example of that.
Yeah.
There's a story in Friday's papers that talks about people in Kavango East who were convicted of, in the traditional court,
That guy
of killing
got
a guy.
lost.
So they must either pay 15 heads of cattle or 22,000.
Yes, exactly. So it does not add up to somebody, because 22 cattle here, it could just be 2. Yeah, because people do not understand the psychosocial orientation that people have towards those cattle. So if, for example, I was told when we got married, my wife's family, she had gotten about 80 cattle. Now, 80 cattle is a farm already, but that came as part of the ceremony. And there's a lot of things that has to happen. If somebody have even, culturally, if somebody have given you a sheep, they must go with one of the arm of the cattle for giving you a sheep. And those things are difficult for people to be able to understand. And part of what we are going to be doing now, going forward, is to be able to demystify even meat-core and meat-goat. It is not, they were not supposed to be busy with this funny fight. They're supposed to actually even be doing research. What is the context? What is the scale of a domestic economy? And the amount of money, because there are no receipts as single quotas. But if somebody just stood there for a day and just ask a person, so how much did you spend a single quota? If you go there with your friends, you ask order meat for 300. In your consciousness, you are not even, it's not about the kgs. It's about you put there's chili, and particularly you Mbaja guys, you like a lot of chili. So there's chili that is there. And because of chili, it manipulates the Mbajas. And they can even pay 500 for a small portion of it, because that's their orientation. So we need to broaden people's understanding. But if somebody stands at those markets and just said, how much did you spend as research? You would actually be able to see that for single quotas alone, what you have there, it could easily be a multi-million-dollar industry. You see some of those guys coming with Land Cruisers, dropping meat or dropping firewood. So they are making a lot of money out of there. Yeah. So it is not. We mustn't have this orientation just about the size of cattle and things like that. We must understand. I would even argue. What if the domestic economy? What if the domestic economy is half or equal to our export? In terms of the money that is circulating, we would not know, because we don't have measures to actually understand. We have no understand the cattle orientation, particularly of the indigenous communities that are when we are talking about the red line, we are talking all the way from Katima all the way to Kaoko. In fact, the people in Kaoko are busy now. There's an audio that was sent to say they were speaking in Osherero and say. Onanje, the Amupanda, if he succeed, freedom is coming. People are now saying freedom is coming. In fact, they are already quantifying how much is the transport from Opuo to Windhoek. So they will be bringing meat to their children and things like that. What it would also mean, ShopRite, Pick and Pay, Spar and all those shops would naturally start reorientating themselves. Look at goat meat in this country. I'm convinced that we have more goats in Namibia than cattle.
Of course.
But you don't find it in the shop. But when you have, even now in Windhoek, when you have baptism for your daughter, what do you do? Or your daughter achieve anything, what do? You go to Brakwater to get a goat. I never understood, but there's a white man with a butchery there, Brakwater, that side. I never understood Why is it that if we open up maybe a butchery, what if the domestic economy is able to absorb? And the young man who's there at Mitco is doing a good job, but he's facing a lot of resistance. He's in Congo, Brazzaville, he's in Ghana, he's many of those places that are there. And those Africans and their approach and orientation towards meat, it's not a small portion. I'm convinced if we sell more meat to the Africans, we wouldn't be talking about so-called lucrative. We are told lucrative Norwegian market compared to what?
Exactly.
Who has done research to quantify it? Compared to what and things like that. And even the Chinese wanted to have an abattoir for donkeys.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. There have been a lot of donkeys there, particularly in Umsati, that has been giving a problem. And some of the guys in Umsati, you guys decided to hire trucks and load a lot of donkeys and dump them in Ondonga area there. So, in the middle of the night, so we know the story. It's that side of Umbajas. Because there's a lot of donkeys there. And they brought the donkeys there in Ondonga. But what I'm trying to explain is that people must understand that, yes, this narrative about the red line, it is not just about job and things like that. I hope that we need to now open up a greater conversation. You know, we have a greater conversation about how do we manage livestock, particularly in those areas. Indeed. In fact, people must start doing their thesis. In court, we are asking for 3 things.
In summary.
Yes, in court, we are asking for 3 things. Number one, I'm simply saying that the red line is unconstitutional because it's discriminatory. Yes. We all agree. There's evidence for that.
Point number 2.
We're also saying there's no legal basis to support it. Yeah? So on that basis, it must be declared unconstitutional and illegal. Mm-hmm. Number 2, in court we are saying that because of those considerations, just to be reasonable and say government must be ordered to remove the red line within 90 days. But I'm also saying, for me as a family man, I must not be hindered. You know, I'm not going to distribute meat in Windhoek. I'm saying, I ate this piece of meat, but this one I'm going to eat in Windhoek. I must be allowed to go feed my family.
Exactly.
I must be allowed to go for personal consumption. If the court want to keep it, the red line, you must at least allow me to go feed my family for personal consumption. What type of country does that not allow men, such as myself, to feed my family? Indeed. What type of society do we live in that you can only feed your family in this to Namibia that we have? Yeah. So we need to be able to understand that there's a broader context to the red line. And the future can only be bright, but the conversation must be started. We have no confidence in these guys to solve this problem. They would have solved it in 30 years. They would have solved it since 2014. The only way is that the court must ventilate these issues. In fact, we are going to have a lot of people that are going to testify, including Shitana has a song about Onfinjon Tilian and Aujepo. So we want him to come. We are debating with my lawyer, but I'm saying Shitana must come and testify through songs. Courts must also transform. Shitana we must have speakers there in court, and he performs so that the judge can also dance to the music, and then later get the translation. What does it mean? Yeah. The red line. What does it mean? And the red line have also entered into art and music. Yes. That's the context in which that we must have this conversation. And I hope that we are able to explain this, and people are able to understand there's a broader context that is also going to be good. So I hope everyone understands, including yourself and everybody here, including the young lady that is in production, that this is the best for the country. Whatever the outcome, this is the best for the country, because we are now going to learn. Government is going to learn to do things, and the courts are going to realize that sometimes all the people that they have is just, all we have is the court. And I think if we don't maybe have the court, if the court does not assist, it might need us to physically remove the red line. And I hope we don't have to resort to that and have the institutions of democracy to solve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Job. So this is Job Amupanda in his element. When he takes on something that he's passionate about, he takes control of everything. He took over my show tonight, but for a good reason. We heard the context and the background and the prospects of the red line. So thank you, Mayor, for coming. We appreciate your time. It was a struggle to get you to the show, but then you came and then you took it over. Henk, I wish I could have, you know the man yourself.
I'll keep him calm. I know him. Don't worry, he will not remove it by force.
Yeah, so
I will talk to him afterwards and give him some good advice.
Indeed, thank you for coming.
It was good to be here, and all I can say is that that there's not even a question. What we need to do in the country is whatever we do
Yeah,
must benefit all the people,
indeed.
everybody. And if it's currently not the case, then we must change the situation that it become the case in the situation that everybody must benefit. You know, I just have to, there's one figure that I looked at. They say if they remove the red line and they can implement some other measures to look at this, they could create over a period of time 35,000 new jobs. But the most important thing is the quality of the meat. You talk about ShopRite and all these Pick and Pay that can buy up north. The quality must be improved.
Indeed.
The quality currently, not in every area, but the quality is not good.
In fact, we can send white farmers to go and help and advise communal farmers.
But that's what needed to be done a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's what needed to be done. I saw people
Yeah.
sending proper thoroughbred bulls to the Kavango region, and I assume also to the four regions, and you can see the increase in quality. But that need to have, that must be the priority.
Indeed. Henk, thank you very much for coming. I was a very bad moderator tonight, but it's two men who are very passionate about what we are discussing tonight. So thank you for watching, and have a pleasant week ahead.
Choose your Flex package with Paratus today. Sign up for ultra-fast fiber with the convenience of mobile LTE. That's 2 products in one bundle. It's new, it's one bill, and you can stay connected in more than one location.
For more information, visit paratus.africa/NA.